On behalf of United Consciousness, I feel highly pleasured to welcome our next guest, Ms. Caroline Van Demio. She's an adult psychiatrist, family and systematic psychotherapist from Belgium. She works at the Brussels Night Hospital, specialized in the psychosocial rehabilitation for patients suffering from chronic psychotic disorder. She shares the vision that human beings should be regarded in all their dimensions: biological, psychosocial, spiritual, and ecological, rather than a purely medical dimension. She co-teaches Sowa Rigpa counseling along with Dr. Nida Chengpo, training students in both traditional views of Sowa Rigpa and Buddhism, as well as modern psychology in the care of people suffering from mental distress. She hopes to be able to include traditional, nature-based and spiritual knowledge on mental health in a modern-day medical practices.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. So today I'm going to talk, it was asked me to give a talk about spirituality and guilt. And when I heard about this subject, I was very touched because guilt is really a subject that I see nearly every day with my patients. When they consult me, I see a lot of guilt. I can say most of my patients have to do something or another with guilt. And so this is one of the most common themes I see in my medical practice. So what can I do with guilt? Because of course medication is not going to help. And when I discuss guilt with my patients, with time I have come to realize that guilt is like anger turned towards oneself. This is what I conclude from the discussions we had together. So what my patients with guilt, especially, of course, the most depressed ones are the ones who will, where it's the most obvious, but I can see this with all my patients. Many of them will say, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough, other people are better than me, they're smarter than me, they are more beautiful than me. I don't deserve to have all this that I receive because I'm so bad. And in the end, so that's the extreme, I better disappear. And there is, of course, this risk of suicide, which happens once in a while, unfortunately. This subject has made me think for over the years. I realize I work in a country where Christianity has been the main religion for many centuries. And this really has impregnated our culture. And I'm not going to talk about how other religions deal with guilt. I can only talk for the religion of my country. In Christianity, there is this idea of the original sin of Adam and Eve who committed a crime. They deserved punishment. And this idea has evolved into human beings are sinful by nature. They are not good enough. And this is, at least where I live, very culturally all-pervasive. Everyone feels this continuous guilt, even if we don't know why. We are guilty anyways. To give you a small anecdote, when I was a kid, we had to go to the church once in a while to go for confession. And we had to go and see the priest and confess our sins. And I would tell my teacher, I don't know what I did wrong, because the teacher told us you should say what you did wrong last week. And I said, I don't know what I did wrong. And then the answer of the priest was, of course you did something wrong. You are guilty of something. No one's perfect. So please confess. And if you don't confess, then your crime is that you are being too high, that you have too much ego. And so I would invent things that I had done wrong. And my classmates would do the same. Maybe not all of them, but this is how it was so strong that we do something, we are wrong, we are bad by nature. It's so strongly ingrained in the culture that it's really, you know, it was just all around, and it did some damage to certain people. The other thing is that what I also see in my practice is that people are very afraid of conflict. We try to avoid conflict because we believe conflict is a bad thing. And so we avoid it as much as we can. So what happens is that our anger gets internalized with time, because of course anger will not disappear, so we try to repress it. And so in the end, this anger will turn towards ourselves because we don't dare to resolve the conflict we have with the other. So what I hear, certain stories that I hear is, my husband cheats on me because I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I should lose more weight. Or I lost my job because I'm too lazy, although I work more than I should, but I could still do more. And because I didn't do enough, I'm losing my job. Or my kids yell at me because I'm a bad mother. I don't try hard enough to be a good mother for them. And so because they are angry at me, it means I'm a bad mother. And so I could go on with this list forever. So people, this people feel guilty. It's easier, what I'm saying is easier to feel guilty than to try to resolve the conflict and to try to show the anger and to try to resolve it in a healthy conflict with the other. Of course, in our country, people are not very religious anymore. They don't go to church anymore. But I'm just saying the Christian culture is still very present. It's still ingrained very strongly in families. What I also realize is that other traditions are probably less about guilt and more about regret and responsibility. I do something wrong, and therefore I regret my action. But I still remain the same person. So it's not about me, but it's about my actions. Whereas guilt is about me. I'm basically someone bad. Whereas when we are about regret and taking responsibility for our actions, it's nothing about me. It's something I did wrong. I had a wrong view. So I'm just trying to get my view right again. And therefore, I can see that I did something wrong. And so it is all about the action, but I remain the same person behind the action. And then, of course, it can become more philosophical. Who is me? Is there an ego and all those things? But I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that when we talk about regret, it's much more powerful because regret is about actions and it's not about the person who is doing the action. So by regretting, I can make things up, or I can promise never to make the mistake again. And so when I talk with my patients about guilt, we will talk a lot about those things. And when I'm trying to help them change the word guilt and really define what they feel with their guilt and then try to change it with regret, for them it's really to hear the word regret as opposed to guilt. It really changes a lot for them. It really helps them to understand what's happening, and it really helps them to on the path of healing. And of course we can say, yes, but in the Christian tradition, you have this thing of confession where you ask for forgiveness and you will be forgiven by God, and therefore it will purify you. But over the centuries, there has been an abuse on this by overly focusing on my wrongdoing by the church. And so therefore it has been, I don't think it was the original idea in Christianity to say that we are all so bad by nature, but the church and the religion, the official religion, really made it into that. I once met a Christian priest, not a Catholic one, who the first thing he told me is, he said, oh yeah, you are a doctor, so people get sick because of the original sin and they need to pay for their original sin. And I was very shocked by this. I said, well, I don't see people who are sick as being people who need to be punished because they did something wrong, and those who are healthy who didn't do something wrong. So anyways, there's still this very, people who are sick are guilty. And so people who are sick, who are mentally ill, they feel this guilt very, very strongly. But of course, there are solutions. I don't find them. I didn't find them. They probably exist, but I didn't find them in the religious traditions. And in the psychiatry practice, we have inspired ourselves in the spiritual traditions, especially in Buddhism. And of course, in Buddhism, there are the four immeasurables. The four immeasurables, which are the wish that all sentient beings have happiness, that all sentient beings don't suffer, have the absence of suffering, that all sentient beings can be joyful, and that all sentient beings have equanimity. So those four immeasurables, I believe, are very powerful to heal from this sense of guilt. But so this is wished for all sentient beings, and many people will repeat this for all sentient beings. But we see more and more that we should start with oneself. And many people have a difficult time to include themselves in this wish, to wish themselves happiness, absence of suffering, joy, and equanimity. They feel guilty just by wishing that for themselves. They have an easy time wishing this for others, but they have a very hard time wishing this for themselves. They say, I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to not suffer. I don't deserve to feel this joy, and I don't deserve to have this equanimity. So the first step when we do those four immeasurables is really to help people turn this toward themselves. And so I have in my meditations with my patients, because I do meditate with patients once in a while. What we sometimes do is, I will not, of course, not call it Buddhism. I will not call it anything, because my patients come from old backgrounds. But we do a meditation where we will, instead of saying I'm sending love towards myself, I ask them to close their eyes and to imagine someone that they really love, someone that loves them unconditionally. It can be someone alive, someone dead, or it can be their animal, it can be whatever. And they're so happy to meet that person, and they visualize that person in front of them. And they're so happy to meet that person, and they receive all the love from that person, and they're so happy to feel it. And so they feel this love coming from someone they love. So it's easy to imagine, it's easy and so they feel that they receive it, and it helps them so much. And whenever I do this, it's very powerful for my patients. And then I do the other way around. They give it back to the person that they love. So I think this is really a first step to working on that guilt, because by doing this, people have a very good feeling. And it's not selfish, because people are afraid that if they wish something good for themselves, they will be selfish. And I think it's not a selfish thing to do that, and to do it this way. Someone they love, give them the love. It really has a very powerful healing effect. And in psychiatry, there are certain practices which are inspired by all those religious traditions, especially in the mindfulness tradition. But we can see that purely mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is not always successful because of this lack of self-compassion that lots of people do have. And so with time, people who practice this mindfulness with patients have understood this, and they have developed new practices. The most famous one being mindful self-compassion. This is just what I described. So and you have the compassion training, compassion cultivation training, and all those things. So the first step is self-compassion, which is essential for healing and very difficult for many people, and we really should not skip that step. And the second step, after you have accepted that you deserve this love, this unconditional love, and this unconditional compassion, it will be much more easy to accept mistakes, because it's like you are giving all your love. For example, when you have children, you love your children, and if your children make a mistake, you're going to help them to go through that mistake and take responsibility for their actions. But you are not going to say they are evil and bad and they have a bad basis. You accepted it. You know it's human that they make mistakes. So you turn the mistakes, you make it about actions and not about the person. And so when you understand this for yourself, it's much more easy also to understand it for others. And so I really believe by using in the inspiration from all those great religious traditions and put them into practice in the medical practice for people who really suffer from severe mental distress, for example, depression, it can really have a powerful effect for people in mental distress, because because of this. And so, of course, medication is very helpful, for example, for someone who is severely depressed. But there are meditation practices which can be very powerful in healing to deal with the guilt problem and really help people get over the guilt problem and change it into regret. And then by changing it to regret, become more responsible and more powerful in their action. And so this will be helpful for healing people from their mental illness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Caroline. It is always treat to the soul listening you. And the amazing blend that you bring of science and sacred is something which is, I think, unique about your speech. So nicely, you brought the impact of the concept of original sin on the psychology of the people. And so nicely, you brought as a solution that instead of guilt, it should be regret and responsibility. It gives more breather to the people, and they feel more in command that I am not wrong, my actions are wrong. As it is, as you said, it is the rather change of paradigm for them mentally. And as a solution, you mentioned about Buddhism's four immeasurables that gives that all sentient beings or and me also deserve happiness, lack no suffering, joyfulness, and equanimity. But then you said that people lack self-compassion. And then I was so touched with the idea that you brought that in meditation, you tell them, okay, fine, if you can't bless yourself that much because you feel you don't deserve it, have some of your loved ones blessing you. That's amazing idea. You also mentioned about self-compassion meditation. You also talked about accept mistakes are of the actions, not of the persons. And you gave the importance that meditation can help in dealing with the guilt. That's amazing. United Consciousness looks forward to work with you for human good. And very soon, office will contact you to take your guidance in further. Thank you very much, Dr. Caroline.
Very much.
Thank you.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Dr. Caroline Van Demue for coming on to the platform of United Consciousness. Thank you so much.